This is our homily for Sunday, October 6th, the 27th Sunday of Ordinary Time. One day, a woman explained to me, my husband and I divorced over religious differences. He thought he was God and I didn't. Or another one, Adam and Eve had an ideal marriage. He didn't have to hear about all the men she could have married, and she didn't have to hear about the way his mother cooked. With the theme of marriage quite obvious in our first reading from Genesis and the Gospel, it's easy to find thousands of jokes, and that is because of the inherent challenge of two becoming one, two who are very different individuals with different histories and personalities, with different families and baggage. And yet, that's the ideal to which we're called. First, I think it's important to put the whole discussion in the context of relationships in general. If there is any way we can summarize the message of Jesus to us through his life, actions, and words, it is that one of our most important goals needs to be having right or just relationships with God, with self, and with others, especially the most vulnerable. Our relationships are to be generative, that is, bringing forth peace and growth. Now let's look at the readings. The selection from Genesis and Jesus' comment on it in the Gospel are the basis for the Church's insistence that a valid sacramental marriage cannot be dissolved, except by death. It's important to realize that the Hebrew word for flesh does not just mean our body. It includes physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual. In short, the entire person. As a result, the marriage bond is stronger than blood bonds. The man leaves his father and mother, his closest relatives, to be with his wife. The law of Moses in Deuteronomy 24 says that if a man, not a woman, just a man, finds in his wife something indecent, he can divorce her. Some religious leaders interpreted this strictly, that is, only adultery could be used as a reason. Others interpreted it very loosely. Anything that displeases the husband, he can get rid of her. Anything goes. The religious leaders were trying to trap Jesus into a discussion of grounds for divorce, forcing him to take one side or the other. Jesus did the following. He gives the ideal. He says that Moses allowed an out because of their hardness of heart, which I would read as brokenness, and he supports the ideal. And very importantly, he puts both men and women on an equal level. It goes both ways. So the ideal is that a valid sacramental marriage is forever. It cannot be dissolved. But we don't live in an ideal world in any way, shape, or form. And this is true in terms of human relationships. We are all broken and bring that brokenness, whatever it is, to our relationships, including marriage. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's best for a person to leave a relationship or marriage for their own safety and health, in the case of abuse and danger. So, how should we react? One side says we must strictly uphold the ideal, especially in present-day culture where divorce is so prevalent and accepted. They fear the slippery slope if the church changes anything in our approach to this question. The other side said, yes, no divorce is ideal, but some people are in a very bad situation through no fault of their own. How can we support them? How can we include them? How can we show them the mercy that Jesus asks us to show? These are difficult questions, and it's a delicate balance to hold to the ideal but show mercy. I would suggest the following. as we reflect on these readings and challenges. 1. Be supportive of married couples. Marriage is not even easy. Married couples need to communicate well, to get help if needed, and not walk away unless there's absolutely no other option and danger is involved. 2. Pray for married couples, especially those who might be having difficulties. 3. Work to model good relationships in all circumstances, being compassionate, merciful, and forgiving. After all, that is what is needed for a relationship to endure, especially a marriage relationship. And finally, don't be judgmental of others, but rather accepting and supporting. We don't know all the details. To emphasize that last point, I'd like to end with a quote from Father Warren Sazaman, the former president of Marquette High School, who was speaking of Pope Francis's visit to the United States, and I quote, "Traditional Catholics can tend to have difficulties with Pope Francis, fearing that he is watering down church doctrine. However, it is clear that he's not altering the content of church doctrine. He is altering the tone and emphasis to one of mercy, forgiveness, inclusion, and compassion, rather than judgment and exclusion." End quote. May our community be one of mercy, inclusion, compassion, and forgiveness. God bless.